But moving on from here, we just did our recap, so now we got to look forward. Khabib versus Dustin Poirier, UFC 242, is this Saturday. And the UFC is returning to the United Arab Emirates into Abu Dhabi. This main card, I believe, will be starting about 2 p.m. Eastern Time in the States. It will not be a typical pay-per-view. It's going to be a daytime event. This will be exclusively on ESPN Plus. All UFC pay-per-views are now. You got to buy it through there. And as I mentioned, it's going to be headlined by a UFC lightweight title bout that's very highly anticipated between dominant champion Khabib Nurmogamedov taking on the UFC blood and guts veteran Dustin the Diamond Poirier. And Khabib Nurmagomedov doesn't really need any introduction. 10-0 in the UFC, 27-0 overall in his MMA career. Arguably the most dominant fighter in the sport. One of the greatest of all time. Coming off his win in probably the biggest fight in UFC history against Conor McGregor last October. And he's also coming off a big suspension from his infamous jumping of the cage and going at Conor's corner, notably Dylan Dennis, after the bout, where he gets suspended by the Nevada Athletic Commission. And because of that suspension that Khabib got, they ended up instituting a interim title bout. And this turned out, they tried to make it between Max Holloway and Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson, for whatever reason, declined, and they ended up getting Max Holloway versus Dustin the Diamond Poirier, which was a rematch. And Dustin Poirier goes in and steals the show of the night and wins the bout against Max Holloway to become the interim champion and earn his shot with Khabib later on in the year. That will be consummated this Saturday in Abu Dhabi. And Dustin Poirier, so underrated, so underappreciated. A veteran of 22 UFC bouts, 17-4 with 1 no contest in those bouts. And he's got 2 wins over Max Holloway. He's got a win over Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez, Anthony Pettis. He's been around forever, and he is the definition. I mean, it really actually got me kind of emotional watching the countdown and him talking about, he didn't even finish 9th grade. And he's earned everything that he has with his fists. And it was really powerful to see. And I think that he's somebody that the fans really gravitate toward. He always brings it. The UFC's been rewarding him with main event after main event after main event on fight nights. And here he is getting a chance to go in and shock the world against the dominant force that is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib, obviously, big win over Conor McGregor, Al Iaquinta, Edson Barbosa, Michael Johnson, Rafael dos Anjos. Nobody's really been able to slow him down. The only time we've ever really seen him tested at all was his bout with Gleison Tibau. And Gleison Tibau was most likely doped up on a lot of PEDs at the time. So Khabib has just been completely dominant. If he wins this, it probably finally sets up the showdown with Tony Ferguson that a lot of hardcore fans have wanted for a long time. They've kind of cleared out this great division. But also, obviously, the Conor McGregor rematch is on the table there. And so I think there's a lot of potential big fights for Khabib if he keeps winning going forward. But he's also mentioning kind of retirement. I think that he is going to be one of those guys that's going to walk away early if he gets a few more big fights and gets a few more dominant wins. Because it's not going to take much for him to maybe have a strong argument as the greatest fighter we've ever seen. And I don't think that he's really has the mindset that a lot of people do in the West about money and status. I think that he just wants to do what he needs to do to prove who he is and what his worth is, and then walk away into the sunset and go live with his family in Dagestan and be happy. So this is a great bout. Also on this card, UFC 242 this Saturday on ESPN Plus, we got Edson Barbosa taking on Paul Felder in what is a rematch from a July 2015 bout in which Barbosa won by unanimous decision, but that was an absolutely epic bout. These are 2 guys that always bring it, great strikers. Paul Felder is somebody who's been fighting with broken hands and broken ribs and all sorts of stuff, and Edson Barbosa, some of the greatest highlight reel knockouts we've ever seen. Barbosa coming in ranked number 6 in the lightweight division, Felder coming in ranked number 10 in the division. So big opportunity for Felder to move forward, and this is a big opportunity for Barbosa just to stay where he's at and get another win on his resume. I also want to highlight Islam Makhachev, who is the teammate of Khabib Nurmogamedov. Very similar in style, coming in ranked number 15 at the lightweight division. He's taking on Davy Ramos, who's on a 4-fight UFC win streak. Makhachev, 27 years old, 17-1 in MMA, 6-1 in the UFC. He's on a 5-fight win streak. As I said, very similar to Khabib Nurmagomedov. Very heavy grappling. I mean, just insane grappling prowess, and very gritty fighter. And he was actually involved in the whole altercation after the Khabib McGregor bout that almost saw him face a suspension too. But he's back taking on Davy Ramos here in Abu Dhabi, which is the UAE obviously is a primarily Islamic country, so this is a good opportunity for both these Islamic competitors to have a good stage where they're going to have a legit fan base around them. And also on this card, going down a little bit, we got a battle of ranked heavyweights between number 4 ranked Curtis Blades and number 9 ranked Shamil Abdur-Akhimov. And Blades really has been flawless in his UFC tenure other than his 2 losses to Francis Ngannou. He's 11-2 in MMA, 6-2 overall. He just came off a big win over Dustin. He's 28 years old. And when we look at Shamil Abdur-Akhimov, he is 20-4 in MMA, 5-2 in the UFC, on a 3-fight win streak, 38 years old. And as I mentioned, he's coming in ranked number 9. Curtis Blades is coming in ranked in the top 5 in the contendership with number 4 with a number 4 rank. So this is a big opportunity for Shamil to move forward. Curtis Blades, I think, is somebody that he's got wins over Alistair Overeem, and as I mentioned, he just came off a big win over Justin Willis. Very strong wrestler. Knocked Overeem out from the guard with elbows. Has a lot of potential. He's just somebody that's ran into Francis Ngannou twice and got blitzkrieged both times. But great fighter, and this is a big opportunity for Shamil to move forward and Curtis Blades to continue where he's at in the top 5 in the rankings. And one last fight, because I like to highlight ranked bouts. We got a women's flyweight bout that's actually pretty pivotal. You got a number 5 ranked Joanne Calderwood, 33 years old, 13-4 in MMA, 5-4 in the UFC. Just came off a loss against the number 2 ranked Caitlin Chukagian. She's taking on number 6 ranked Andrea Lee, who's 30 years old, 11-2 in MMA, and 3-0 in the UFC. As I mentioned, number 6 ranked Andrea Lee going against number 5 ranked Calderwood. Lee's really on a good run, 3-0 in her UFC tenure. Calderwood kind of fighting to stay where she's at. She's borderline 500 in her UFC tenure. She moved up to 125 from 115 pounds. Has looked better, but still, as I mentioned, just came off a loss to Chukagian. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting fight. I think both these girls are going to stand and strike with each other. I think Andrea Lee's a little bit more of a complete fighter. I think she's a little bit better in the clinch, a little bit better boxing. But I think it's going to be an interesting bout, and I'm actually looking forward to it. But when we look at that flyweight division, it's just, man, who is really going to beat Valentina Shevchenko anytime soon?